2 weeks ago, the Democratic National Convention took place. Originally, it was supposed to happen in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but due to the coronavirus, it was all going to happen online. A lot of people were skeptical of this change, based on what we had seen from cable news, the Biden fundraisers, and digital rallies. Was this going to be a Zoom convention, with everyone awkwardly hanging out in their own window and the internet cutting out occasionally? Outside of politics, the Zoom interviews, performances, and videos across the board from this year were kind of meh. People don't have good webcams or microphones just laying around. I guess initially it was kind of cool to see Robin Roberts anchoring Good Morning America from home, or to see the cast of The Office reunite digitally. Also, shout out to this guy who's cracking open Miller Lite to get through the Zoom call. All of this Zoom video call stuff was cool initially, but eventually it was just tiresome. It went from these people are also in lockdown like me because we're all in this together, to just a sad reminder that we're stuck in this hell because someone called COVID a hoax instead of trying to combat it. Expectations were truly on the floor for this convention. We saw what Zoom productions look like. They weren't exactly great, but I'm happy to report that not only did this convention not suck, it absolutely ruled. The convention was a masterpiece. Everything from the speeches to the pre-produced videos to the roll call was excellent. The DNC deserves an Emmy. A fear of many was that when it came to the speeches, it would just be Biden in front of his bookcase, or the Obamas in front of their bookcase, or the Clintons in front of their Goodwill couch. But the speeches all had fitting backgrounds. Never feeling tone deaf, the lack of audience really helped these speeches feel so important. Senator Bernie Sanders appearing in front of chopped wood to give his full-fledged endorsement for Vice President Biden was a very on-brand speech for Bernie, and a continuation of a storyline from the day before, signifying that Bernie is here to get work done. Actually, I don't know if that's true, but the forest background to the chopped wood background seems a bit too coincidental. We also got this amazing outtake from right before Bernie's speech.
You probably should get off the screen.
I'm gonna give the speech. Yes, hello.
Stop it. Enough. Enough.
Then, right after him, we got perhaps one of the most skilled communicators in American politics, former First Lady Michelle Obama. She greeted us from her living room and talked directly to the American people. She didn't speak from a position of authority, she spoke as if she was just our friend, who was also concerned about the country. Michelle Obama is so emotionally sincere that it's easy to let your guard down while listening and forget that she's the former First Lady and not your average American. She addressed a lot of questions that a lot of Americans have been asking themselves for the past 4 years.
So what do we do now? What's our strategy? Over the past 4 years, a lot of people have asked me, when others are going so low, does going high still really work? My answer, going high is the only thing that works. Because when we go low, when we use those same tactics of degrading and dehumanizing others, we just become part of the ugly noise that's drowning out everything else. We degrade ourselves. We degrade the very causes for which we fight.
She also touched on a feeling that a lot of Americans have had or have suddenly started to feel.
Because whenever we look to this White House for some leadership or consolation or any semblance of steadiness, what we get instead is chaos, division, and a total and utter lack of empathy.
And most of all, she hit the perfect way to irritate the president. Is not to talk about how he's a total loser or how he's essentially a child. It's to completely dismiss him.
So let me be as honest and clear as I possibly can. Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country. He has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he is clearly in over his head. He cannot meet this moment. He simply cannot be who we need him to be for us. It is what it is.
Then future First Lady Dr. Jill Biden spoke. Dr. Biden's speech happens in a classroom and she hits all the right notes. This isn't her first introduction to America, but it may have been the first time America was listening. The empty classroom gave a personal effect to her speech. She delivered a speech that wove together her career as an educator with her story about how her marriage with Joe Biden began with an effort to heal a broken and grieving family. She talks about Joe healing a broken family twice, and how that will translate to uniting a country that's been increasingly divided for 4 years.
How do you make a broken family whole? The same way you make a nation whole. With love and understanding, and with small acts of kindness, with bravery, with unwavering faith. You show up for each other in big ways and small ones, again and again.
Then there was also this cool moment at the end.
Hey everyone, I'm Joe Biden's husband.
Hillary Clinton had a speech on night 3 that was unique. It took place about 3 feet from where Bill gave his speech. The core part of her speech seemed to be a cautionary tale. Hillary's speech didn't appear in the network slot. It happened right before network television started to air the convention. It's hard not to see that as intentional, especially when the Republican Party is still acting like they're running against Hillary 4 years later. Then President Obama spoke in front of a wall at the Constitutional Center in Philadelphia. This background tied directly into his speech. President Obama talked about the constitutional threat Donald Trump poses.
The one constitutional office elected by all of the people is the presidency. So at a minimum, we should expect a president to feel a sense of responsibility for the safety and welfare of all 330 million of us, regardless of what we look like, how we worship, who we love, how much money we have, or who we voted for. But we should also expect a president to be the custodian of this democracy. We should expect that regardless of ego, ambition, or political beliefs, the president will preserve, protect, and defend the freedoms and ideals that so many Americans marched for, went to jail for, fought for, and died for.
Provide a contrast between President Trump and Vice President Biden.
I have sat in the Oval Office with both of the men who are running for president. I never expected that my successor would embrace my vision or continue my policies. I did hope, for the sake of our country, that Donald Trump might show some interest in taking the job seriously, that he might come to feel the weight of the office and discover some reverence for the democracy that had been placed in his care. But he never did.
And then let 12 years of rage out at his successor.
For close to 4 years now, he has shown no interest in putting in the work, no interest in finding common ground, no interest in using the awesome power of his office to help anyone but himself and his friends. No interest in treating the presidency as anything but one more reality show that he can use to get the attention he craves. Donald Trump hasn't grown into the job because he can't. And the consequences of that failure are severe. 170,000 Americans dead. Millions of jobs gone, while those at the top take in more than ever. Our worst impulses unleashed, our proud reputation around the world badly diminished, and our democratic institutions threatened like never before.
President Obama made a very convincing case for Joe Biden. He's not going to just be the commander-in-chief, he's going to be a comforter-in-chief as well. That may sound cliche, but sometimes that's what this country needs. Someone who understands your struggle and the urgency to fix it.
12 years ago, when I began my search for a vice president, I didn't know I'd end up finding a brother. Joe and I come from different places, different generations, but what I quickly came to admire about Joe Biden is his resilience, born of too much struggle, his empathy, born of too much grief. Joe is a man who learned early on to treat every person he meets with respect and dignity, living by the words his parents taught him. No one's better than you, Joe, but you're better than nobody. That empathy, that decency, the belief that everybody counts, that's who Joe is. When he talks with someone who's lost her job, Joe remembers the night his father sat him down to say that he'd lost his. When Joe listens to a parent who's trying to hold it all together right now, he does it as a single dad who took the train back to Wilmington each and every night so he could tuck his kids into bed. When he meets with military families who've lost their hero, he does it as a kindred spirit, the parent of an American soldier, somebody whose faith has endured the hardest loss there is.
Right after President Obama, we had Senator Kamala Harris giving her acceptance speech for the vice presidency. This speech was historic. Harris is the first black woman and the first Asian American person on a major party's presidential ticket. In her speech, she hit Trump with one-liners.
I know a predator when I see one.
Told voters more about who she is, and laid out a vision that directly addressed the country's challenges with race. The vice presidency speech is always a hard one, especially when there's no crowd and you have to follow one of the best presidential orators ever. Then the next night, we had the best speech of the convention.
Hi, my name is Braden Harrington, and I'm 13 years old. And without Joe Biden, I wouldn't be talking to you today. About a few months ago, I met him in New Hampshire. He told me that we were members of the same club. We stutter. It was really amazing to hear that someone like me became vice president. He told me about a book of poems by Yeats he would read out loud to practice. He showed me how he marks his addresses to make them easier to say out loud. So I did the same thing today.
It takes a lot of courage to go on national television like Braden did and give a speech knowing that you would stutter during it. It also gives an image to what the presidency used to be. A president used to be a role model and someone who inspired the youth of this country. When I was a kid and didn't know any better, I loved George W. Bush. Then, I absolutely loved President Obama, because he was like me. We were both from Chicago. If it wasn't for him, I don't think I would be as interested in politics as I am. President Trump doesn't inspire kids anymore. He just inspires racists to be the worst version of themselves. Now the second to best speech of the convention came from the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden. This speech was absolutely amazing. Joe Biden is an absolute paragon of stamina and stubborn optimism for a country that desperately needs it. The 3 nights before this speech laid out why Joe Biden is the man for the moment. As a country, we're in a period of great pain, and Joe Biden's life is an amazing lesson in perseverance.
Look, I understand. I understand how hard it is to have any hope right now. On this summer night, let me take a moment to speak to those of you who have lost the most. I have some idea how it feels to lose someone you love. I know that deep black hole that opens up in the middle of your chest and you feel like you're being sucked into it. I know how mean and cruel and unfair life can be sometimes. But I've learned 2 things. First, your loved one may have left this earth, but they'll never leave your heart. They'll always be with you. You'll always hear them. And second, I found the best way through pain and loss and grief is to find purpose.
This speech was greatly assisted by the lack of audience. Joe was talking about some serious stuff. The dark times that we're in, death, lack of hope, a need to fight through the dark to get to the light. It felt like a presidential address. The speeches at the DNC were perfect, touching on not just the struggle Americans were facing, but giving them hope that they would get through them, while reminding them who caused those struggles at the same time. What made the DNC so special wasn't the speeches. It was the creativity exhibited across the board. It was the little things that made it feel so special. Seeing people from 57 different states and territories during the roll call at important places in their state was awesome. We saw everything from the shores of Hawaii to a giant head of Frederick Douglass to this plate of calamari. The convention roll call is typically a very boring and long process, but this added new life to it, and it really showed that we are one big, unique country. Another one of these small but great things would be the Jill Biden introduction video. It introduced her in such a fun way. Listening to her and Joe talk about how they met was like listening to your grandparents tell you about how they met. While Jill Biden had been second lady for 8 years, I didn't know anything about her other than her being a teacher. This video did such a good job of showcasing who she is as a person. What is it with Democratic nominees and having wives much cooler than them? Even Joe's video was great. By the end of the convention, it felt like we had gotten to know the Bidens so well. The virtual medium of the convention was perfect for the Bidens. Joe isn't a showman or an entertainer, and Jill isn't a model. They're more or less normal Americans, and they did a great job of showing that. Look at this eating scene. They're eating subs and have a big bowl of chips at the table that their grandkids haven't even touched, but they put them out there, you know, just in case. It's like going to my grandparents' house. Obviously, there will be cynics who will say it's all staged for the camera, and I'm sure a certain aspect of it was, but the authenticity of the Bidens is dripping off of them. Overall, the DNC was a masterpiece. It felt like a conversation with the American people while showing off the things that make America great. The DNC truly deserves an Emmy for the production quality and the creativity they exhibited with the convention. Anyways, thanks for watching, folks. Don't forget to hit me with a like if you haven't already, and to subscribe as well. We're only 20 subs away from 200 subs, which is pretty cool. So I will see you next time.